Okay, we're ready. Hi, and welcome to everybody who is here to join us for this Riddle of Steel. My name is Shauna Zach. I'm an organizer with Swordsquatch. I've been an organizer for 4 years, and I volunteered for the first year, and then I guess I did such a good job that they're like, please come help, and then I did, and now I do this. For our moderators on the call today, we have Kels Lund and Justin Beecher. Again, Swordsquatch does not happen without a bevy of beautiful volunteers, and they're all super awesome to join us and help with this. What they're going to do is they're going to take questions that you put in Q&A while Callie is talking, and then when they're ready, when there's a break, they'll get those questions over to Callie. Callie is also going to set us up with some question time where you'll be able to raise your hand and we'll unmute you so that you can ask your question live. Quick reminders for this session about our code of conduct. We hope you all read it before you joined us. Black Lives Matter, be nice to each other. Please be patient with any technical difficulties. Use the chat to talk to each other and to just say hi. And let's see, if you need any assistance, please let Kels or Justin know, and they'll help you out. What else do I need to tell you? If you fail to follow our code of conduct, we will remove you from this meeting and you won't get to come back in. So we'll all be a little sad, but mostly don't be obnoxious. And that's it. That's all I have to say. So I'm going to throw things over to Callie, and Callie's going to teach us some stuff about mindfulness.
Alrighty, and I just want to thank you all for coming and give you just like a couple of minutes to go grab. Towards the end, we're going to need some swords and or sword facsimiles if you have the space to do so. This can be, if you're looking to do single-handed stuff, this could be a wooden spoon or a pencil, or I've done this with a straw before. If you need something with a double hand, to grab it with 2 hands. It is all going to be really slow speed. If you don't have a ton of space, you can just mimic these movements that I'm going to show you. So we'll give, like I said, just a couple of minutes so you can go grab those things. Let me think. We'll give it to 7:05, and we can continue to say hello to lovely people and talk about how excited I am. Alrighty. And I guess just so, just for a little bit of information on my background, I've been doing swords for, I think it's going to be right around 5 years now, if not almost 6. I also have been I also was I guess I'm trained as a counselor. I'm currently kind of in between jobs right now since I'm applying for grad school. But during that time, we had to continue, like we were constantly looking for new things to help improve our practices and help with our clients. And one of the things that I was introduced to during that time was this concept of mindfulness. And I found that this was something that was really beneficial with a lot of my clients, just building that awareness of your body and what it is doing, just even from the day to day. And then I started thinking about like how it started with a little bit of like overlap on like how can I use these things that I'm noticing to help promote both like my fencing, and then also there's a little bit of when I started taking on more instructor roles and more like leadership roles in my club? How can I use these tools to help my clubmates and my other fencers be cognizant of like what, again, kind of what their body is doing, so that both they can do it, like they can be safe while they're fencing, they can be safe for others while they're fencing, and then also when they do something cool, can they do it again? So this idea is, it's, like I said, mindfulness is a lot of awareness and bringing, just instead of being mindlessly and just, reacting and going for it and just kind of relying on those, neural networks that we build up, that kind of muscle memory shorthand that we use sometimes. Building those stronger connections for good fencing. The Like I was kind of mentioning, and this really harkens back to a lot, if anybody caught the discussion yesterday about wrestling, which was, especially kind of towards the middle, when there's a lot of talk about like, building those like neural networks and like how do we learning is built by kind of associations of connections. And how I like to think of it is like your brain is like a forest, and everything that you learn is a pathway on the forest or through that forest. And when you have a very strong connection, that is a very well maintained trail. So that's something that, like, Parks and Rec or the DNR goes out, clears trails, they make sure that it's, clean and safe for everybody to use and is accessible. While other things like new associations or new skills that you're learning, or things that you don't know very much about, or actions that you don't know a lot about, are more like deer paths that, aren't very well defined, but they are there. And it's something that if you work closely and follow, you can follow it, but it's hard sometimes. So what mindfulness does is that when you are either blazing or following that deer path, it helps establish it. And the more that you walk down those paths, the more, the easier it gets over time, and the more those associations build. And mindfulness helps kind of build that process just a little bit faster, because in the act of slowing down, you are making more of a chance for those strong associations to be built. So the other benefits of mindfulness, just kind of in general for our brains, is that it helps improve focus. So again, because we are, getting it helps us both, like, with being able to focus on a singular task for longer periods as we practice and train this, but it also helps us when we get off track, to helps us bring us back, especially, this is where I feel like the difference between mindfulness and meditation comes in, because meditation, like most of the time, is very like focused on like emptying your brains, less thoughts, just, there's a little bit of being in the now. But mindfulness is just kind of that, that very clear lens of focus. And it's what's also nice about mindfulness is that it doesn't necessarily have to, like, you can focus on a sensation that you're looking for, or you can focus in on like just your breathing, or focus in on like, what does the sword grip in your hand feel like. Other kind of general benefits of mindfulness include like being able to handle stress better and helping our brains kind of relieve stress. And then also we're better able to retain our training. And then more specifically for swords, what this does is it builds better muscle memory, and it builds better awareness, which again, that kind of harkens back to us being better training partners for both ourselves and others. And then, that was my third point, is that it creates safer training partners. All right, so what we're going to do is, once I get adjusted a little bit, what we need people to do is either get to the edge of the chair or stand up if you're able to. And once you've got yourself, like I said, if you decide to sit on the edge of your chair, we're gonna give it a moment so I can reconnect to the internet. Position, you're going to put one hand on your stomach and the other on your back. And what you are looking for when you breathe is to feel both your stomach and your back expand just a little bit. So once we get to that, so lots of people say wrestling is the foundation of fighting arts. That's not true. The true foundation is breathing, because if you're not breathing, you can't fight. So, with good breathing, aside from getting lots of oxygen to our muscles that we can continue to fight more effectively, what deep breathing, especially or diaphragmatic breathing, does is it helps us actually retain more, since it brings more blood to the head and more oxygen to the head as well, it helps us maintain kind of connection to the prefrontal cortex, which is the part in the very front, which houses all of our, it houses like all of our decision-making process. It houses our, like, they call it higher logic, so stuff like math and like the stuff that's very, very cognitive, for kind of lack of a better term. When we get into those high stress situations, such as fencing or wrestling or any other combat art that you are looking at, our brains have a tendency to view that as a life or death situation, which, it kind of, in extreme contexts it can be, but our brains do a really bad job of telling what is literally going to kill us or what is just really stressful. And that, that's kind of where we get those like adrenaline dumps, or we go into like monkey brain or lizard brain, as some people call it. Yeah, breathing is so good. I have to check that book out. I feel like I've heard of it though. Anyway, but yeah, by continuing to access that frontal part of your brain, it keeps you more aware of what you've trained for, or aware of what you are doing, and it keeps us in a mindfulness state. So for this first breathing exercise, we're, like I said, going to put our hand on our stomach and one hand on our back. We're going to try and fill our lungs up from the bottom to the very top. So we're going to go probably a little ASMR here with my breathing, and let's begin. And especially while you are doing this, really focus in on where do you feel your breath. And you can breathe in through your nose, out through your nose, in through your mouth, or out through your mouth. Trying to avoid like pure mouth breathing, just because it's a little bit better for you to breathe through your nose. But it's hot out there. And if you can't quite feel that expansion in the back, and it should feel almost kind of like that feeling of a balloon filling up, try, for lack of a better term, like rotating your hips. So let's see if I can do this on the screen. So if here they are, as I'm breathing, I'm not feeling anything. So what you're going to do is rotate the front of your hips forward just a little bit. Or, maybe a little bit back so your back is nice and straight. Yes, tilting the pelvis is a good way to think about that. So, and it's there is a little bit of rolling around until you feel like that right spot. If you're having a lot of trouble with it, you can lie down on the ground on your back, and there a lot of times kind of the spine is in line and the hips are in line, and there it's sometimes a little bit easier to get that really good expansion, and then you can feel it like your back, you know, pushing into the ground a little bit. What the other thing that especially those really deep breathing things do is that it activates a nerve cluster that's in your back, and that runs what it does is it helps tell the amygdala, which controls all of the fight or flight and kind of that lizard brain, it tells it to calm down. And when it calms down, it's again easier to access those higher logic pieces. All right. Awesome. So I guess this is a moment that I'd like to take and like open this up for like if there's anything that I'm feeling my pelvic girdle, or do you want me to expand? It's more through like the actual like the stomach is it feels more like your stomach is expanding versus like down through your, if your ribs are expanding, that's more likely that you're breathing through the top of your chest. You should be looking for your what you want to imagine is your hand being pushed outward from your or by your stomach. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's if you've done any like singing or like played an instrument, this breathing pattern should feel really familiar, because it is like the idea is to try and build up as much of an air column as you can, and you know, then it's you produce it out with like strong sound or with strong sound. And that same idea can benefit us here, because then it's continuing to supply our muscles with the oxygen that it needs to continue. All right, so this is where I'd like to take a moment and take 3 more of those deep breaths for yourselves, and then reflect on what, like, kind of some of the things that you just experienced with that. What, is there anything that stood out, or if there is, like, if this kind of idea is new to you, or if if you're an old hand at this, and things that like help you with that. So if I think we've decided that we're going to do like the raise your hand. So if there's something that you wanted to say, or if you want to put it into chat, either one of those are fine. Or if you want to ask like a question, I've got my Q&A open and trying to keep a little track on that. So we'll give it just a little bit for people to think about that. I guess I'll take a moment and ask my mods if there's anything on Facebook Live that needs addressing.
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, cool.
Somebody does like your mug a lot.
Oh, thank you. Thank Joseph Brassey, because this was my first gift that I won at Grit City's first annual White Elephant competition. Yeah. All right. So I think if we are feeling good on that, we will continue. The next thing we're going to do is kind of build off of that breathing into something that is specifically kind of swords related now. And that is to use this as, like, you start with your breathing, and then what you're going to focus on during this is a visualization. So I'm going to guide a little bit of that. And what I want you, oh, sweet. Okay, somebody has something. So I've done a lot of breathing like this in yoga and such too, but I've never felt like it's translated into being able to keep breathing like that while fighting, or even getting into the yoga practice. Yes, that is something we will progress further into as the session goes. Part of this is building up like it is partly building up the habit of doing it. And especially when you get really tired, it's really easy to start chest breathing. But what really is better for you, like, at least from my understanding, like I know psych stuff and I know a little bit of the positive, like physiological things from breathing, but we'll put that out as a caveat. But from my understanding, like the more kind of like the more regulated your breathing is, the easier it is to like recover and the easier it is to like continue fighting. And part of it is just building up a lot of practice. And we will, that's why at the beginning I asked for grabbing some sword things, because we will be doing some at least slow speed, like moving our swords, remembering to breathe, and like how that kind of can translate together, and kind of how we can work on building, like how do we build a practice, or like doing this in practice or in like tournament setting. I hope that answered your question. Sweet. So the next thing we're going to do, like I was mentioning, similar deal with weightlifting to the end, controlling stuff. Yes. Yes, I think so. I haven't done a ton of weights, but yes. All right. So what I want you to imagine while we're doing this is we're going to close our eyes. We're going to get back into that deep breathing, you know, that little like routine that you've got for yourselves, making sure that you're, you know, feeling that expansion outwards. And you're going to imagine your perfect overhand cut for, you know, whatever system you have. If you're, you know, if it's the Germans, the Oberhau, if you've got like a saber, this like that quick, wow, I can tell I haven't done this in forever. Anyway, like the cut from, if you're right-handed, from right to left and down and across. So what the benefits of doing the visualization is that you can, our brains have these special neurons called mirror neurons, and they activate when we see somebody doing a meaningful like gesture. And what it does is it basically is mirroring, or like it's activating as if we were doing the action. So that's one of the benefits to doing something like this, is that it can activate those mirror neurons, and you know, it can kind of like it can continue to build those associations. So even if you know, like, oh, you know, I'm, you know, my overhand cuts are a little, are like, you know, are a little weak, but if you can like sit down and you imagine, you know, that, you know, your opponent is in front of, or like your tatami mat, or your opponent is in you, you know, you're in a good guard to start, you're, you know, you swing out and the sword gets, you know, and the sword like just cuts through, good angle, nice and smooth, good straight lines. Just imagining what those like perfect cuts are like. And you want to do this kind of like nice and slowly with, you know, again, kind of, if you can, time it with your breathing some, so like you're, when you're breathing that nice and slowly, you imagine like, you know, you start that breath out, your hand, or like, you know, your fingers squeezed, your sword starts to move, your arms extend, you get that really good extension, you know, the tip is out and it's drawing through nice and smooth until you get to your end point and you go back into your guard. Nice and smoothly too. What is kind of nice is that you can build these sorts of like guided mindfulness things. You can kind of build them together. So, you know, if we talk a little bit about the benefits, or like there's been talk about the benefits of shadow boxing, and this kind of like is building off of that just in a slow way. So if you've got your shadow opponent, you know, you can think about going through mindfully, like, okay, you know, we're, you know, stuck in goo and going real slow. So, I get to do my cut out, and then like, oh no, they've gone into crown, so what counters crown? So maybe you go into like a Zwerg, or wow, I'm just mushing all of the different schools together today. But you can move through slowly and just kind of imagine like a play, and then your opponent does a counter, and then you can what's the counter to that, and just like that slow back and forth, and just imagining like good form and nice smooth transitions, and it gives you a moment to also kind of think. my start was with a mushing of the school, so my vocabulary never caught up either. But that building together, like that kind of smooth transitions, imagining like it gives you that moment to think about like a good counter. And then you also, what's the benefit is that you can also have kind of a yielding opponent as well. Or if you're wanting to just focus in, just like you see the Oberhau come in, and you just Zornhau Ort into it, and you just imagine that perfect Zornhau Ort every time. That's the good stuff. All right, so we're going to continue on, and we're going to do another mindfulness exercise that I like really appreciate, especially for like checking in either like before class, to make sure that like I am that I'm doing okay, and that I'm not ignoring my body or anything like that. Or like it's another really nice one to like wind down before bed, and this is called the body scan. So what you want to do for these is get into like kind of a nice neutral position. So if that's like if you're sitting, sitting kind of nice and square. This is another one that I really like to do lying down, because it just makes things a little bit easier for me to imagine going through. And it's basically what you do is, again, while practicing these nice deep breathing exercises, you're just going to check in with every part of yourself. Sometimes this, like in a lot of the books that I've read that talk about this exercise, they describe like a ring of light comes down as you like kind of scan your body. I'm a sci-fi nerd, so I like, the idea that it's lasers coming in and like scanning me out. But you can also replace whatever, visual works for you. Or if it's like a checklist, or, aliens, I don't know. This is supposed to help you. But what you do after you've taken, again, this nice couple deep breaths, you're going to start with the top of your head and make sure that things are doing okay up there, noting any like places of tightness. Do you have a headache? Are your eyes really tired? Does your nose hurt? Are your lips chapped? Like even just little things like that. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Like anything really works. As you continue down, how is your neck? Again, noticing any places of soreness, any places that like hurt, shoulders, arms, chest, continuing down like through your stomach. Do you have an upset stomach? Do you, are you feeling nauseous? Do you feel like, is there tightness through there? How are your hands and your hips doing? For me, a big one is like, how are my knees doing? And then just go all the way down, and you take as long, or like you can take as long as you need for something like that. Some people, like for me personally, it makes the most sense to start from the top of my head and work down. For some people, starting from the bottoms of their feet and working up makes more sense. And sometimes what you could do with this, if you find like a place where like it feels like there's tension stuck there, like emotional tension, What you can do is start imagining pushing that out of your body through the nearest end. So if there's something that starts in your shoulder where you just are feeling a little stuck there, breathing, and like as you scan down, just kind of imagining it moving through. And you want to be careful for points that are, a place where it's like obviously like it's sore, where you need to treat it tenderly. And that's something that's kind of nice about, taking it that little bit of time to do that inventory, is that it gives us a chance to check in with our bodies. And especially since this is a really physical and sometimes demanding, yeah, exactly, put mental love into your pain. That's a good one. And it sometimes can help. Like I've had like moments that have been like, okay, wow, that was a tough hit on my hand or something. And you just take a little bit to like think and just give it a little bit of time to recover, and then you're able to like jump back in. Don't do that on big injuries. Don't do that on big injuries. But like, if it's something that just kind of like rattles you a little bit, giving that little bit of space to be like, whew, that was a little scary for me. Well, let's just walk this back and kind of bring us back into our little Zen mode. Okay, I think we should hopefully start doing some sort things now. Oh, sweet, yes. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, absolutely, yes, just check in with how your body is feeling. Don't mind all that blood. It's just but a scratch. So, let's grab our sword facsimiles. I'm going to go over to my HEMA closet. I'll be right back. I need something really short, so please don't mind the costume swords. But so what we're going to do is we've imagined that we've checked in with ourselves, we're feeling good, we're missing Swordsquatch, but we're here and we've been practicing our deep breathing. Now, how do we translate this into actually physically doing something after like imagining that perfect overhand cut and we are ready to get it? Well, we do it now. So what we're gonna do is get some space. And we're just going to imagine that perfect cut. And just down and through. And where personally I like to keep that breathing moment is like breathe in through prep. If there's a squeeze, breathe out and through. And just breathing through the entirety of your cut, nice and deep, engaging all those muscles and going really nice and slowly. Because the idea, again, is that we're becoming aware of what our body is doing during the time that we are like using it. And that's what kind of the core of mindfulness is just bringing all of that awareness and building up those good associations. All right. Okay, we've got a question here, which was about doing a body check-in, triggering a student's trauma response. So I have luckily not had that happen in class. Being that I used to be a counselor, stuff like that is definitely possible. If there is, like, this is always open to what is safe for both like you and your students. If there's a space that they know is not a good space to check in with, they can they can skip over that because they know their body better than, you know, you do or anybody else. If somebody does start to have like really like big emotional responses to a check-in, you know, have them, like, Swords is supposed to be a fun and safe place, so, you know, let them do what they need to do to get back into like a safe space for them. So if that means like taking a break, going for a walk, you know, taking a small like water break, you know, breathing through, if they feel comfortable enough and you feel comfortable enough for them to talk with you about what's going on, that's okay. But especially since most of us here aren't, you know, trained mental health response like people, and even that sometimes can still, like, you know, that sort of thing can really catch people off guard sometimes. Like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing, or, you know, some people know what parts are a thing. So, like I said, all of this comes down to what feels most safe for the students, what feels most safe for you. And if somebody does start getting worked up, let them know that they don't have to push it if they don't feel safe doing that. Or, you know, if, you know, let them do what they need to do to, like, get back to feeling like more of a safe space. Like, we've got kind of a saying, which was around Grit City, which is, you know, it is important for, like, your kind of like your intensity is as much as your training partner can handle, but we also, you know, say that you need to advocate for yourself around that too. And so if you, like, you know, if that is like bring it up, or if this is something for yourself, just like kind of letting it pass over a little bit until you're more ready to address it, like those sorts of things are okay. All right, so we've done this. All right, so I guess now that we've gotten like our bodies moving a little bit, I'd like to open this back up for okay, awesome. I'd like to open this back up for a kind of a little bit more of like a discussion. Like, what are the things that you were noticing when you were really slowing down with that cut? You know, what were the things that you, like, or if there's things that you overlooked before that felt really automatic, especially for people who've been fencing for a while. You know, if you were newer to fencing, what are the things that, like, oh, this felt like weird through here? Is there stuff that you want to like bring back and like talk about, or if there's anything like I said, just like things that you noticed during this? And again, we can use the Q&A. You can go into the chat, raise your hand, Facebook Live it. Personally, I'm a really big advocate of, like, you know, like keeping slow work, and I think that there's a lot of benefits to it, just because it does build those associations really well. All right. All right, so if I'm training to cut down, breathing out feels good, and it's good. But when I come up, then I tend to inhale and hold it. Thoughts? So is that just the straight cut down and along that same line back up, or do you cut down and then flip so that the like long edge is coming back up again? Just so then I know kind of what your body is doing. Or is this just when you're bringing your sword back up?
They mentioned in the Q&A, when I flip is the hold.
Okay, yeah, I just saw that. So, perfect. Okay. Okay. So So this is something that I kind of take from yoga or I guess more from like Tai Chi, since I have a little tiny bit of like background through there, is the idea of movements out, breathe out, and that also gives you a chance to project your intentions out. So that's one of those times where being able to, like, if you can do like a quicker breath in, like when you are actually fencing, being able to do a quicker breath in so that when you move, like when you do that cut out, you are breathing out. And again, like kind of fighting is a conversation, and being able to, and part of that is the energy back and forth. This is where we're going to get into that evergreen history I've got. And being able to also project outwards as you are cutting up. And again, kind of those outward movements are, you want to try and breathe out with those. I hope that helps. Some of that is like learning. Like I've got, if people are interested, I have more like music breathing exercises that can help with like, doing like a quick breath in, but then like sustaining breath out, or just building up that lung capacity. If anybody is interested in that, I can talk a little bit about that. And I hope that answered your question. Next, we've got my right overhow is worse than my left-handed. I find more, I think about my cut less natural it feels. How do you be mindful but not overthink it? Part of that comes with practice. So some of this comes to, like, it is going to feel really weird to focus on, like, what are my hands doing? What's my arm doing? Why is it doing that thing? But instead of like focusing on the why is it doing that thing, why is this happening, why is this sensation happening, just kind of accepting like this is what's going on, and it's okay that it is not, that it may not feel the most natural right now, or like something feels weird. Just like, it's one of those, okay, this feels weird. There's a little bit of, once you're through it, like, okay, try it again to see if, like, make sure that it's not just a fluke of what's happening. And part of this just comes from practicing mindfulness more as well, and bringing it more into your retinue. We like to think of it like, you can think of those sorts of like why thoughts kind of like clouds in the sky, and they're just sitting there looking up and watching them pass. And it's one of those, like, it's totally okay to have those sorts of thoughts, but that's also not, like, it's good to notice them because they're telling you things, but it's also, you also want to make sure that you are like following through. And so, it's stuff like, why does my arm feel weirder? Why doesn't it feel natural? It's like, okay, well, what, like, that gives you a point to, like, on the next cut, focus in, like, what was the part that wasn't feeling good during that? So if it was like, oh, my elbow feels really weird now, oh, like, okay, so I'm gonna cut again. Oh, okay, my elbow is out. So for the next one, remember to, like, bring that elbow in more, arms nice and straight. Just being able to use those thoughts but not let them get distracted from you. Okay. So it looks like, do we have, oh, there's the second one. Okay. So, all right, so we've got another question. So when I'm wrestling and my ribs get compressed, squeeze, I find that I'm forced to take more shallow breaths or less. I am unable to intake air. Is there any way I can do these breathing exercises with more shallow breaths? Absolutely. Wrestling is one of those examples where we do sometimes get like caught in really uncomfortable situations. And so being able to like have good breath control in different situations is important. So, if that is like doing some shallow breathing to make sure that you are like still being able to fill your lungs well that way is good. And that's also good that you have the awareness around your breathing during those times, because I know for me with wrestling it gets really, really chaotic, and sometimes I feel like my body is just kind of doing things sometimes. And I know especially with wrestling and with swords, sometimes when we catch ourselves in those moments of mindlessness, you know, not just kind of doing things and not really knowing like what's going on or why, and just kind of following. But you know, being able to be aware of, you know, like, okay, so I'm being compressed here, it's harder to breathe, so then that gives you a chance to just focus a little bit. It's like, okay, you know, it's not a bad thing that this is happening. All right, so given to it, thankfulness to you, I've been focusing on stretching my lower abdomen past surgery. Told me I need to work on stretching my upper abdomen as well. Oh yeah, no, burning pain is not good. Awesome. I'm being squeezed like a sweaty toothpaste tube, and that's okay. Very nice. All right, so we're gonna go. I've got one more cutting. Oh yeah, yes, please don't forget that. So we've got one more, unless there's any other like questions people have right now or things that they are wanting to like shout out right now. We've got at least one more exercise, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some stuff that you can do to kind of bring this into like more active ways to bring this into your club, or like, you know, and more open discussion as well. Give it another couple minutes. Not that much, but oh. All right, I see that the light is on for you to talk, but all I got was a bunch of screechies.
I am so sorry, since I'm a moderator. You just have a great comment on Facebook that says thank you from Ambrose Mack for addressing trauma responses.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially coming from the counselor background, like everybody's going to have like those spots or like those places that, like, you know, or not, I guess not everybody, but like, you know, trauma's out there. It sucks. Don't do the thing that's going, like, especially with swords, it's supposed to be fun and safe and get us active. We don't want you to, like, you know, make this a hard and challenging place. The world is hard and challenging as it is. Fuck that shit. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the first 4 cuts of the miter square, keeping these things in mind, which is going to relate back to what Jess was asking about. Thanks. And remembering, especially keeping those breaths coming out as you cut, giving yourself, especially since we're doing these things nice and slow, ample time to adjust, like to breathe in deep, nice deep full breaths as you turn to your next cut. And you know, being very aware again of what, you know, what is your body doing? Are there like signals that you're seeing? You know, where do you find breathing hangups? Like I said, just bringing that real awareness to like what your body is doing. So I am going to assume if you know about Swordsquatch and you're signed up, you probably know these cuts, but just in case, I will do the cut patterns as well. Get a little bit more space in here. You see my horrible messy office. And not to nab my wire string. So we're going to start in kind of the top right, cut down. Oh goodness, now that I'm on the spot, cut up, down and around, whoop, cut up, and flip around, cut down. So that's, you know, top right to bottom left, bottom left to top right, bottom right to top left to bottom right. And please be nice to me if I got that wrong. I actually just do lift an hour KDF. So you know, that is not something I know about. Okay, so for context, so feelings of hypoxic pain from rebreathing CO2, particularly in the context of harness fectin, what are some things we can use for managing that? Yeah, that is something I definitely do not know about. From my understanding, there are specific like breathing techniques that y'all use when you're breathing in the big metal masks. I have no experience with that. I'm sorry. I'm a loser. Alrighty. So, again, I'm gonna let this go for a little bit more, remembering to keep those like cuts nice and smooth, your transitions nice and smooth. I like, especially with this one, I really like using this with really beginning students because it's a really easy cut sequence. It kind of makes sense. You're cutting along really similar lines. It gives you a good chance to look at kind of their conception of like what like where those cuts should be placed. And then it gives you like, especially if they're moving slow, that gives you a chance to like look at what people are doing with their bodies, a little bit of like you can get into maybe a little bit of why, and it makes it a little bit easier sometimes to like get in front of like potentially like bad or harmful like cutting mechanics so that they don't hurt themselves later down the road. Alrighty. And what's nice also is that you can continue to expand this out, you know, take some time, go through the whole like 16 cuts or whatever of the Meyer sequence. You know, it gives you a chance to kind of train those breathing sequences, and especially that idea of like when you move out, you breathe out and project out too. This is a secret. Don't tell no one, but that's part of like my like secret of like why I want or how I control my space in the ring is that like I also push my energy forward as hard as I can. Like the idea of the other side of the ring is like that's mine and I'm going to eat it. Alrighty. So I guess when we are building off of that single cut and building it onto kind of the combination cuts, is there anything else that kind of stood out to you? Anything that like was it harder to focus for those longer periods? Was there like yeah, I guess what are the things that you notice or questions that come up? We keep just gaining people in here.
Hello?
Hello?
Excellent. So I was trying to focus on like breathing out with movements, which is something I'm used to from other arts and as well. What I was finding was breathing back in and getting that belly breath in was where I was having difficulty. Like it took me, I had to slow down real slow to realize that I'd have my my belly breath in, exhale as I attacked, and then I realized I went automatically back into like a high rib breath, just naturally, and had to like just stop, breathe in, breathe back out, stop, breathe in. Do you have any, I don't know, insight on that, or exercises that are particularly good at targeting that? Or is that just like keep doing what we're doing and slowly get better at it?
It is a little bit of like keep doing what you're doing and slowly get better at it. Again, like it's a good thing that you were able to like it worked because you noticed you were doing it. Like that's kind of the joy of like mindfulness. Even if you technically didn't do it right, you noticed that maybe something was off, and that's something like that's great. I think kind of the big thing is just continuing to breathe and trying to work this into kind of like also daily life also. So like when you're sitting back and like just like cruising on the computer playing your DS, or beating your boyfriend at Mario Kart, you get a chance to like, oh, I'm actually like breathing way up here, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take a couple of like nice deep breaths in and kind of refocus that breathing. And especially like as it's really easy to lose track of it as you go, because it's something like you don't think about breathing. It's like an automatic thing. Again, it's kind of like if you aren't breathing, you are dead. So, or dying. Neither are good. So, breathing is such an automatic thing, so it can feel weird to really bring focus to that. But by just kind of continually practicing it, realizing like, okay, well, I'm not doing this right, so we're going to refocus and just kind of bringing your attention back to the breathing, back to the movements, and it's okay if that happened.
I'm not sure if I am. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yes, sweet. Let's see. Do you have any other hands? Any other questions? Anything on Facebook land?
Nothing fresh on Facebook.
All right. I see Jess is here though. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so like I'm cool and totally with you when I'm moving in like a deliberate fashion, but when I think about like kind of the frenetic energy that would come once maybe a sparring bout happens or whatever, like that's maybe when my attention would flow away. Or maybe even like the pace of my cuts would outpace my breath. So do you have any advice on when that occurs, or how you deal with it, or any thoughts? I would love to hear from you.
Okay. I know like I definitely don't think about my breathing while I am fencing, just straight out. Usually it's either like, oh God, what's happening, or just zone how ort. But I think part of that comes, and I'm going to like talk about a exercise that I did a couple of times at Grit City that we were using it kind of for like teaching control of your blade. So being able to like hit with exactly as much force, exactly where you want it is kind of the idea. But I think it could also be used for like regulating your breathing. And the more that you just kind of practice like those deep belly breaths, the more natural they become, and then the less you have to focus in on doing them. So I think between just kind of making it part of like more like normal life as it again is safe for you to do, but also yeah, I think like I said, I think as it becomes more normal for your body to like do that you don't have to focus in on it as much during fencing. And I know like I definitely catch myself like, you know, chest breathing and like getting getting hyped, but especially like when what's nice like during like squatch style rounds is that there is that 15-second break, and that's a really good time to like bring yourself back down, kind of ground yourself in your breathing, get back to like focusing like on kind of the here and now, and just what your body is doing. In more traditional like long point style, or I think combat con style rules, you'll have that break in between each like each exchange, and that's another good time to like, you know, take that breath, reorient yourself. Like that is like, that's kind of the thing that I do. It's less like trying to focus on like focus on my breathing and my footwork and what my hands are doing and like what my opponent is doing all at once, because that's a lot of things to try and like juggle in your brain, and just focusing on like, okay, what, like for me especially, what is the feedback that I am getting from my opponent, like both like kind of in like the touch and the like visual feedback am I getting, and like am I like kind of like what is the response to that. Like it's kind of like, I know for me I find a tendency to fight a little bit in the knock because of like wanting to get that response back. But and this was where like in my original plan for this this session we were going to like eventually play the binding game, which is like just the two swords like in the bind against each other, but we're going to do that blindfolded to give people that sort of like touch feedback and help build that idea of like the like getting those responses through like touch versus like and being mindful about that touch like sensations. But as far as like the breathing is concerned, is like the more natural that it becomes to do those deeper breaths, the easier it's going to be to do in more like frantic settings. That was long-winded, but I hope it got to the point you were looking for.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm still on audio. So more of thinking about the breaks in between motion as like an emotional and physical intermission. Is that an interpretation that's correct? Or
that, you know, that sounds good. I think that sounds like it would work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. As breathing is kind of like the or at the intermissions. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good way to put that.
No. Well, I'm just trying to interpret your words. I'm trying to be with you.
No, I love it. Like, you know, that's I know that's part of the reason why I super love like teaching, is that it gives like, this is a slight tangent, but like if I can be a better teacher, then I also have a chance to learn something from other people. Alrighty. So Eric asks, do you have any resources you recommend for reading, learning more about mindfulness and breathing? Yes, actually I do. All of my books are packed up. All right. So Donald Altman, is one of the like premier guys in mindfulness like research in the like in kind of the psych area. And he has a whole book called 101 Mindful Exercises. And that book is where, like, honestly, a lot of those are super easy to like to insert sword things into. So like that's kind of where my idea, he's got one called Walking with Mindfulness, where you just take a little bit of time, and like even if it's just like around your apartment, around like your like around your neighborhood, in the woods, wherever you can, just taking a little bit of a walk and like feeling like, what does it feel like when I step? What does it feel like, you know, as I move? What are the sensations that I'm getting? And focusing in on those, like, just what does it mean to be in the moment? Who says you can't do that while you're doing cut exercises, or while you are, you know, doing, or while you're like moving in like a sword stance? Who says you can't do that like if you're practicing like wrestling stuff or messer or whatever? you know, while the lens that he writes it through is more for like, you know, lay people and for anybody to be able to pick up and use. It's nice to be able, like, it's also really, really adaptable, which I really like. And he's got at least 2 books. I can put that into the chat, his at least name. Hank Altman. I can triple check that super duper quick. Yes. And the other one that I pull a lot from is the Mindfulness Toolbox. I love both of those books. All right, let's see, in my area, and at least in the before times, we did a lot of fencing outdoors. Do you have any suggestions for optimized, strong, healthy breathing when fighting in, shall we say, suboptimal breathing conditions, cold or allergy season? That's another tough one. Again, like, I would do it as it is safe for you. Especially with really cold air, it tends to be more oxygen dense, but it also hurts sometimes. And then as far like with allergy season, and especially now during the summer, there's smoke season now, let's be clear. You know, sometimes that means doing that through masks if that is safe. I think most of that is being mindful of like being mindful of what is safe for you when your lungs, or like especially like if you have like asthma or things like that, being aware that sometimes these can trigger asthma, like if you're doing like the really, really heavy intense stuff. And then yeah, I guess there's a little bit like, if it's not safe to do like deep breathing exercises, is it safe to fence in? Is kind of the other question. And if it's not safe to like for like you to be doing like regular outdoor activities, it's probably not safe to be doing too much like deep breathing. Let's see, there's Tumo and fast from chat. There's Tumo and fast breathing exercises, and the idea is to control the fast breathing and then to bring it up and down as you want. Yeah, that's absolutely like, it's a nice way to put some of the like breathing and our mindfulness stuff is you know, and kind of that idea of control is that you are able to calibrate it for what you need. And being mindful isn't necessarily like, you know, I'm being slow and, you know, we're like the old ladies out the park doing, you know, Tai Chi. It's mindfulness is just being aware in the moment. It's a lot of times just much easier to do that when we're being slow, because we can, like, it's much easier for our brains to focus on, you know, we can kind of like move between points as we are like doing like cuts or things, and being aware of like what are our hands doing for a little bit, then what are our arms are doing, what is my neck doing, while we're doing that, while we're being slow, because it gives us just a little bit more time to look at those sorts of things. Alrighty, so I guess, so this is, unless there's anything else that people are wanting to bring up, there is, like, I think this is a good enough time to transition over into like, how do we bring this into, like, if you're an instructor, or if you want to bring this into your like to like your other club mates or into your classes, what you can do. And like breathing and those body check-ins are great for the start of class, and for like easing into warm-ups. You know, new students, it's great to start with some of those mindful cutting activities to like get them thinking about their bodies. And especially like here in the US especially, they're definitely like, we don't think about that. It just happens, and we do the thing, and we walk when we want to if we can, and like, you know, we don't bring awareness to like to even just what we're doing on the day-to-day. And it's like, you can find that super easily happening when you just like start scrolling through Facebook, or just looking on the Twitter, or just, you know, like sometimes I've just found myself kind of staring at the wall for a little bit, and I realized I was just kind of spacing out. like nothing. But, you know, bringing those sorts of awarenesses into our practices and just kind of making it like, there can be a little bit of a like, oh, mindfulness, well, that's hippie stuff, I'm here to fight. But like, you know, that helps us be better, safer partners, like training partners, better, safer sparring partners, better, safer, like people in general. Let's see. So this was an exercise that I kind of came up with, that I really liked, kind of building off of this at a higher intensity. And you need like some sort of like box to be able to step up, like especially a wood box to be able to step up and onto, or like stairs are fine, something solid that you'd be able to get your feet up, like both feet up onto and down from. Something then to lift. We're lucky that we're in a CrossFit gym, so we've got some kettlebells. You can do like if you have just regular weights around, that's totally fine too. If you have just like a heavy thing to lift, that'll work. And then you also need a sword. Surprise. And then what we did was we got into pairs, and it was 30 seconds on, or we would rotate through activities at 30-second intervals, and basically just going like medium to high intensity, and through most of it, with the exception of the last piece. So, or with the sword piece. So you start with whatever stair steppers that you would like to do, or high knees would work if you don't have equipment, and you do that for 30 seconds. Then you pick up your swords, and with your partner, you go through the paired mire square. But the idea is you want to go somewhat slowly, and you don't want the swords to touch. Like, you want to get as close as you can without having the swords touch. And then if you do that for 30 seconds, you do like a kettlebell exercise, or like some sort of lift. So, or hip hinges. Hip hinges are super great for this. And then you transition back to the swords, and then back to the box. And then you do that for like, 3 or 4 minutes at a time. After that, get a break, drink some water, focus in. If you hear the swords like clank too hard together, that's when you start doing planks. Gotta build that core. And you do start with like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, topping out, where probably around like 40 or so. That's kind of a long plank. If you can do longer, do it. If clanking, like too heavy of a clanking occurs. But yeah, no, that one was really fun. Got us all really tired. Let's see. Yeah. So I guess like any other questions, anything else that you like are looking for? Yeah, any other like reflections? CNC welcome. Yeah, I think that like mindfulness is such a really great skill set, and it's such a wide skill set that I think it can be a really, really useful thing to inform our fencing and to inform our like awareness.
Callie, Paul had a question real quick.
Oh, sweet.
Just that exercise you just took us through, the like stair steppers, the paired sword, shifting our kettlebells or something, paired sword back to the stairs and kind of like back and forth.
Yes.
Could you go into a little more detail about the purposes of that? Like is there a specific reason for the structure being like intense, kind of slowed down, intense, kind of slowed down, like back and forth, or is there a specific goal for each different section?
So the back and forth like intensity is definitely part of it. Part of that was to like, when I first thought of this, the idea was to build an exercise that would like have us focus on, like, because a lot of times we would do control exercises at the earliest, like at the start of class, when like we're all like fresh and ready to go and we're like have all of our wits about us. But the high intensity paired with the slightly lower intensity, part of that was to help us get tired a little, like with some efficiency, so we could get to the point where, like, you know, our heart rates are up, we're like breathing like more quickly, but we still had to focus on that control portion. And I think partly like the reason why I like, you know, I flip back and forth between like doing stair steppers and doing like different like kettlebell exercises or different like strength or like lifts or like the hip hinges is like to just add a little bit more variety to it. So we're not just focusing too much on like, you know, oh, my legs are getting tired, or like I think it provided a little bit more of a well-rounded exercise that way. And especially like the then like having to force yourself to be slow and to be, you know, mindful about what your sword is doing helps us train that ability to focus even when we are tired, and even when we are breathing heavier, and even when we are, you know, like you want to like it's much easier to ramp up intensity and speed when we're tired than when we are, you know, when we're not tired and more in control. So that was kind of the idea behind it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, any more questions or anything else people are wanting to know a little bit more about? The other nice thing about this is that it's system agnostic. Like, these sorts of things are useful pretty much no matter what sword or no sword that you've got in your hands. Give it a little bit more, make sure that there's, again, nothing in Facebook land or anywhere else if anybody's typing. Remember, you can also raise your hand if you're okay asking your question live in front of a studio audience. The laugh tracks are recorded though, and they'll be added in later. Thank you.
You do have something on Facebook. I apologize if I butcher this name, but Matthew Cruitt-Kit says, all breathing practice outside of fighting will eventually work into unconscious breathing control during stress situations like sparring.
Yep, 100%. That right there. Okay. Let's see, kind of going with a system agnostic bit. When I was trying to really focus on breathing back to my belly, I actually put my sword down because it was too much going on and was overwhelming to me. I switched to simple punches or toaster twists to try and boil it down to how I recover from physical exertion. That's absolutely perfect. And that was also, that's a great way to like refocus the thing on, you know, boiling it down to kind of its simplest parts. And that's totally cool, and we're awesome to see that. You know, if there is too much going on in one form, take a step back. That's, you know, focus on just like, you know, how does your breathing work when you are moving, which is a really good step. I figured since we were sword people, swords would be good, but, you know, punches are great, squats are good. Just like reaching out and bringing that movement. Honestly, one of my favorite like Tai Chi movements, aside from like parting wild horse's mane, of course, is just clouds. Or I can't remember the exact full name of it, but it's something like passing clouds, where like after you get into a comfortable wide stance, the hands are kind of right around in front of you, and then they make like little circles, and you just breathe out as they pass, and then you bring the other hand. As you bring it up, you breathe in and out as it passes. Transition to breathing in and out as it passes. And as you do this, you shift your weight kind of like between your legs. So as you move to the right, you shift more onto your right leg so that you're at like about 75%. And then as you transition to the other way, you move back so that you were again like about 75% on the other leg, and just nice and easy move through. And that's a really like nice, simple way to focus on, wave hands like clouds. Let's see. I unfortunately don't know any good Tai Chi tutorial or courses or tutorials online. I'm sure that there are. I did it a little bit in college with an in-person instructor, and I did a little bit in elementary school. But most of the stuff that I remember is really from like the short time I did it in college. But yeah, no, like that doing yes, Tai Chi is super great for breath control. It's really great for it's really great for like muscle control as well. I regret having done so little of it, in all honesty. All right, I guess any more questions? Any more comments? Okay. Oh, it's nice. It was nice having you on. Oh man, now it's a rush to cash in on sword yoga. There's Therapy Sword that's been going around, and I'm a big fan of that one too. Sword. Alrighty. I guess is. Oh man, we're okay. I need to not get distracted by the amazing things that are going on in chat. Alrighty. I guess if there's no other questions or anything else, I guess we'll wrap it up. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the real great support this community has had. I really want to thank specifically Grit City, my peeps. And Joe Brassy for supporting me through this, and for Eric for inviting me initially to submit something to Swordsquatch. That super touched me to do that. And then y'all are the best. I love you all. Alrighty.
We love you so much, Callie. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And I hit my goal. I was shooting for an hour, and here we are, hour 24.
Excellent. Well done. It was a really, really good session, and I'm really glad that you decided to do a panel on this. I know for myself, I have, even just starting the practice of mindfulness was what let me get past some of my own trauma stuff that let me get into even going out and working out in public and learning how to do sword, because it was I was so scared before then, but picking up mindfulness and just even I need to do it a lot more, but even what I could get done let me push past some real big barriers. So
Oh yeah. For those of you who are left, if you're looking for more like really interesting like connections on like body and trauma, there's a really, really good book out there called The Body Keeps the Score
Oh
by
my God, I
Vander.
love that book. I bought it
Yes.
for everyone in my family.
Very good. Yeah, that one is a really, really good one. He doesn't talk as much about mindfulness in that, but the idea of our bodies holding trauma, and especially since that's been like we're kind of on the edge of that tonight, that's a really, really good resource. There's a lot of like really, really interesting research out there on that. The title was The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the mind, body, and spirit and the healing of trauma, and it is just amazing.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a really amazing book. Yeah, and yeah, that one, yeah, just like, and especially, I can get you links,
Yeah,
to
so
the stuff.
for people who are listening, Eric has asked that we add books and authors to the chat in the YouTube post. We will do that so that people have something to reference so that they can go back to it. Also, another joke that you might have missed was when we were talking about sword yoga, Eric mentioned that it could be called yorga, which is not the same as trying to figure out how many swords you can fit in your apartment. He has been told.
I mean, that's fair. I'm kind of running into that right now too, since I just moved.
Well, if you just moved in and you don't have enough room for your swords, it's time to find another place. I mean,
I've got a closet now, and I'm very excited I have a HEMA closet.
Well, thank you so much again, Callie. I'm just going to remind everybody that these videos will be available online through the Swordsquatch Facebook page, and then we'll have edited versions up on the Swordsquatch YouTube when we get to them, which should actually be probably sooner than you expect, but longer than we really want. We also have a lot of good programming coming up over the next few days. We have Mike Sherba's buckler class tomorrow. We have a cutting class first thing Saturday morning. It is not too late to register for any of this. We have Jess Finley's workshop coming up, Damon Stith's workshop, and then tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we'll be having our shindig. So join us for some social time, make up a costume out of all the crap you have in your closets that you haven't gotten to wear, dress fancy, dress down, wear a onesie, bring your pets, come join us for our shindig and just have some good fashion social time with us. If you like what you see, if you like the content we are producing, please feel free to donate to us at swordsquatch@gmail.com through PayPal. We'll use that money to make sure that next year when we can meet in person, we are giving you a great event. And I think that that's it. Thank you again, both Callie and all of our volunteers. You guys have been super great. And if you live in the US, do not forget to vote in November. All right. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.